Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. This is Jason Writes Songs and I am Jason, the head of the operations over here, with the co-host being artificial intelligence, unfortunately. I make pop culture and nerdcore musical generation songs, and I also sometimes post some of my personal projects and just simply talk about some things on my channel here. I do hope to later go into some more alternative things, like maybe video essays if I have the time eventually. But right now, there's only a few things that I've been doing on this channel. So, I'm going to be reading a book that I've been writing today, and if anyone has seen the My Friend Da Vinci videos, there's two of them. This is not that book, but that book will most likely be read another video. I'm just trying to not read that currently and read something else. So, for anyone wondering where the Dobby musical video is, because it's not going to be the next song I make, if you watched the video where I talked about that, it does not meet some of YouTube's proportionary things, either not video length or video width. However, I still created it and I uploaded it to YouTube, but it posted it as a short, which is infuriating because it's done that a few other times. For those characters, I will most likely be making another song for them that has different lyrics. Maybe, hopefully, it won't be AI, but I simply do not see that at least happening in the next year or 2 to 3 years until I start to get income and can purchase some more warranted resources. For anyone that wants to learn more about that topic, you can go into the time card that has been placed into this moment. And if I forgot, just scroll on my YouTube channel videos until you find something called Certified Yapper, talking for way too long, and or the first two My Friend Da Vinci reading novel readings. So today I'm going to be reading a different novel that I've created. I gotta say I'm a bit more proud of it. I don't expect many people to be watching this video, especially since no one wants to see a teenager just sitting in a dark room with a blaring light reading a book that he made for an unprecedented amount of time. Much like My Friend Da Vinci, I will be reading the first two chapters of the book, and when I have the fourth chapter pulled up, I will read 3 and 4 in a different video. My Friend Da Vinci I actually read the first 3. I might decide to read the first 3, but that is for a later time in this video if I decide to do. Sit back, enjoy. The best way that I give advice to be watching this video is by doing something else. Maybe you are gaming, or don't be reading another book right now because that will get distracting. Maybe you are, like I said before, maybe you are reading or meditating. If you're meditating and you're watching me read my book, I don't know why you're doing that. Anyway, simply I would watch this video as a background video instead of just staring at your screen this entire time. You might need headphones because I have no audio enhancing devices currently, so I don't really talk that loudly into my Chromebook, which is my camera, which is why I don't have a lot of good quality. I don't have an official camera or a tripod or any resources actually to make videos, so this is simply the bare bones of what I could be doing. So the book we are going to be reading right now is called The Change. Prologue. Change is the main fear of mankind. It's uncertain and goes hand in hand with the unknown factors of life. But change can sometimes be for the better. Think of the yin and yang symbol. The dark part of change, even though it may seem scary at first, there is always white in the black, but there is always black in the white, which means there is always good and evil, while also there is always evil and good, which is a theme of this book. A prologue often goes over the theme. This book is not for anyone but myself and anyone who wishes to view it. The prologue isn't as good as my other prologue, but ignore that. Chapter 1. I looked into the plaid blue and orange striped design of my school-issued skirt as the transporting vehicle came to a stop on the curb of the road. My eyes were fixed on the floor, not bothering to look up towards the house on the street we stopped next to. The door to my right side opened without warning. I changed my gaze to look at the person who opened it. The man was tall, yet plump. He had tan skin that wrinkled from age. His hair was streaky and less jet black than it probably was in his youthful years. His eyes squinted from the glare of the sun. He adjusted his eyeglass and spoke in a gritty and deep voice. "Hello, Mrs. Hernandez. Welcome to the greenhouse residence," he said. The man was wearing a black tuxedo with a white button-up shirt and a beige pocket square. He reminded me of a butler from the Batman series. I don't know if I can say Batman without getting copyrighted, so we'll see how that goes. My eyes slowly adjusted to the sun as I stepped out of the car and glanced at the home behind him. It was panel white and had a very nice-looking wooden porch. Behind the butler was a tall and skinny man with blonde, messed-up hair and glasses. His eyes were green, and he wore a white baggy shirt tucked into gray sweatpants. His eyes conveyed a playful manner, and his grin stretched from cheek to cheek, welcoming me with open arms. The man known as Arthur H. Greenhouse, he is a detective hero who owned a successful company called Octo. He was incredibly smart, but seemed more like a giddy child. Not very intimidating, to be honest. He outreached his arm towards me with an open palm. "Hello there, kid." I don't know how to do a British accent. "I am Arthur." "What was your name again?" he said. His tone came from Britain, weirdly enough for him to be in Park Sun-Moni's New York, which is in America. It confused me, but I didn't say anything about it after that. "My name is Amelia Hernandez," I mumbled out, my gaze going back to being chained to the floor. I followed Arthur and the other man into the house and set my backpack onto the floor next to the entrance door. I looked around the living room. It wasn't much, just a brown couch that ran across the wall, a brown desk with a black television mounted on top of it. The TV was on, showing a cartoon of small little people fighting over small little people. Other small people. I'm not talking about people with dwarfism. On the couch sat a girl about my age. She had brown hair fastened into a messy bun. Thick black glasses made her yellow eyes much more noticeable. She wore comfort clothing, a gray hoodie and jeans, held up by a brown belt laced into her pants. She was taller than me, and seemed older too, but not by much. Her eyes looked over at me, and they filled with this disdain as her mouth curved into a mocking grimace. I cringed slightly and took a step back, my foot landing on the wooden porch. She looked back at the television while Arthur looked over at me to speak. "Well, Psyche, why don't you show Amelia to her room?" he asked her with politeness, like a parent talking to their child. Psyche rose off of the couch and ushered me over to her. I took many small steps all the way over to where she was standing. She led me to a hallway with a brown carpet. Photos of her and Arthur were hung up, and some of a woman with black long hair and blue eyes as well. We eventually reached a fork in the ground that separated two rooms. She lifted her hand and pointed towards the far door in the left corridor. "That one's your room," she said. "Thanks, Psyche," I said back, being nice despite her hostile demeanor. "My name's Rose," she said back with a sharp tongue. "I'm pretty sure I heard Arthur call you Psyche," I said. She scowled and had a look of violence on her face. She seemed to brush it off rather quickly. "Okay, that doesn't mean that you can call me that," she said back to me. I raised an eyebrow in confusion, but quickly decided to just ignore her. I can't imagine it's a good feeling when someone adopts another kid in the same house you live in. Rose had been adopted a year before I had. I was actually just adopted 2 weeks before today. I opened the door to my room as I heard Rose's footsteps turn around and walk back down the hallway to the living room. The room had carpet for the floor. Much like the hallway leading to it, a single window had draped curtains that let in sunlight. The light brightened up the room and seemed to shine directly on my new bed, which was a foam mattress with a dark blue hefty blanket and 2 pillows. It wasn't a large bed, but would definitely do for the time being. There was a brown desk in the middle of the room that ran up against the wall. A table lamp was plugged into the outlet nearby. I nearly tripped on the cord as I went to look beyond the bed. After regaining my balance, I quickly became acquainted with a door that led to my closet. Nothing but hangers occupied the space, and a brown box taped over with packing tape was in the corner. I stared at the box for a little bit before heading back outside to go look around the rest of the house. As I walked the corridors, my feet hit the carpet and hardwood floors each time I took a step. It was odd being in the home of someone else and thinking about how you now lived here. If a feeling I myself can't even describe. It felt like a field trip to high school. I'd be attending the future, but I was taking the field trip the same day that I'd started being a student there. I shook off the feeling before heading towards the left hall, where I could guess Arthur and his wife slept. I got to this tough white wooden door. It had a cold golden handle and a sign hanging on it. I grabbed the doorknob and twisted it. The door came open rather easily as I peered inside. I saw the woman from the picture laying on the bed, watching television. A wide smile on her face when her gaze found me. She stood up off the mattress and came walking over to me. I shifted my weight and avoided eye contact awkwardly. As she walked past me, I heard her say, "I'm getting started on dinner. Should only take a few." She smiled down at me when I nodded. My eyes found hers. She sure looked motherly. I felt safe around her, much more than I did around the others. She must have noticed my look because she chuckled humbly. She then left my presence, heading to the kitchen. I stood there for a few minutes before walking to the living room and grabbing the bag I had left there and bringing it to my room. I put it on top of my blanket, unzipped it, then I stared into the contents of the bag. I brought a few clothes that I liked from my old house, my phone, and a picture of me with my real mom and dad. After looking at the photo for a little bit too long, I placed it on the desk next to my bed and put the bag under my bed for safekeeping. I then walked into the kitchen. My stomach rumbled and my mouth drooled at the thought of some food. I hadn't eaten since the car drive here, which lasted about 3 hours. After finally reaching the dining room, I took a seat in the chair in between Arthur and Rose. The woman was putting together plates of chicken and mashed potatoes. There were 2 empty seats, one by Arthur that I could guess was for the woman, and another at the end of the table, across from Arthur. And that is where the first chapter ends. Again, much like the My Friend Da Vinci novel chapters, it is a bit lower, shorter than I would be comfortable with. However, for the next 2 chapters, I don't very much see that as much of an issue anymore. Excuse my constant sniffling. I've been overcome with some sort of cold, flu, a disease. Chapter 2. The woman put down the plates. There were 4 plates, one for Rose, one for Arthur, one for me, and one for herself. She gave them out before sitting next to Arthur and giving him a kiss. It felt weird to watch that. Whenever I thought of Arthur, the first thing that came to my mind was definitely not adulthood, or the ability to have such a woman marry him. I chuckled from the thought, hiding my laugh so as not to be given a hard time by anyone at the table. The woman looked over at Rose. "How's the school project going, Rose?" she asked. Rose looked down to the ground in guilty surprise. I didn't need to be a psychologist to see that she obviously didn't remember to do it, or something like that. "It's going fine. I just got a bit caught up on some of the parts," Rose said back. She adjusted her glasses to focus on the woman. "All right. Well, make sure to work on that, all right? It's due soon, isn't it?" she said, her voice being more of a command than a question. "Yeah, I'll try to get it done," Rose said back to the woman. I took a bite of the mashed potatoes. They were covered in gravy and coated with butter. I didn't mind the taste of them. I stood up after I finished eating, and without another word, quickly scuttled off to my room. I closed the door and laid on my bed, groaning slightly at the late time. At the first day of school tomorrow, and I wasn't looking forward to it. I heard that the school was a bit different than the norm ones. You had much more free time than usual, like recess, but more longer and repetitive. I pulled my phone out of my backpack and turned it on. The background was a character from a book I liked to read. The book wasn't illustrated, so I had to find art of the characters online. The character's name was George Greystone. If there's a character out there named George Greystone, I did not know that. George Greystone is a completely original creation, at least from my part. George wasn't much of a main character. He was put in the dust by the author. I always thought I could do better as a creator, even as a writer. I searched through my phone for about a few hours until I heard a soft knock on the door. "Come in," I said. The door opened shortly after. Arthur was standing outside in the hall. He smiled at me and opened his mouth to speak. "Hello, Amelia. It's about time for bed," he said. I nodded and internally rolled my eyes. It was pretty late, I had to admit. Arthur left the room as quickly as he'd entered. I sighed before turning the lights and drifting off to sleep. The next morning, I woke up to the sun shining in through the window onto my face. I covered my eyes and stood up off the bed before walking out the room. Backpack slung over my shoulder and my sneakers tied to my feet tightly. I was wearing a black t-shirt with ripped-up jeans. There was no uniform at the school, so no need to look a certain way anymore. I headed out my room and walked into the living room, where the woman was getting ready. Putting her purse on her arm, I raised an eyebrow slightly before my attention turned to the hallway. Seeing Rose walking out of her own room, wearing the gray hoodie from earlier and sweatpants. She had a dark red backpack and her glasses were newly polished. She stopped by my side and took in the sight of the woman just like I had. "How much longer till we have to go to school?" she asked. I looked at the woman, who pondered her response. "About 4 or 5 minutes," she responded. I sighed and slumped myself over on the couch. 5 minutes was a long time, especially when you didn't have much to do in between the minutes. Rose looked at me like I was pathetic. Her eyes furrowed and twitched ever so slightly at my appearance. The woman only chuckled when she saw my dramatized, overacted performance of boredom. Well, Amelia, it'll go by quickly, she said, her laughter dying down. Yeah, 5 minutes isn't that long, but it'll probably be really boring. I responded unenthusiastically. Rose rolled her eyes before taking a seat next to me on the far edge of the couch. She switched the television on and paid no attention to anything but it. I unzipped my backpack and rummaged through the insides, pulling out my schedule for the day. I skipped all the stuff I already knew before falling on the sticky note attached to the schedule. It talked about how I was signed up for an after-school activity, that being cross-country. I had enough endurance to run a track, so I wasn't opposed to the enforced plan that I had no role in setting up. After watching television for a little while, the woman smiled and called out to us. "Girls, the bus is here. Make sure to be quick now," she said. Rose and I both sprung up from our seats and walked out the door into the bus stop, where a big yellow bus was waiting for us. We boarded it. Rose took a seat next to a girl about our age in a blue sweater vest with blonde hair and black glasses. They started talking to each other about something, but I took a seat at the back of the bus where the only open seat was. The seats were made of leather, worn down by years of sitting. My eyes fell on the window and the passing lights along the sidewalk as the bus started to move. Water droplets hit the glass, and the bus stopped at another stop. The doors opened with a loud swoosh, and two boys got on. One of them, who had some kind of lizard on his shoulder, sat in the seat in the front. The second one came walking down the aisle. He had a white buttoned-up shirt, green bow tie, and jeans. His book bag was black and slung over his shoulder. He had silky black hair that stuck up and tan skin with brown eyes. He stopped in front of my seat and raised an eyebrow. "Mind if I take a seat?" he asked with a heavy Chicago accent. Yeah, that was not a heavy Chicago accent. I don't know how to do a Chicago accent. I eternally sighed and looked around. Sure." I reluctantly moved my bag and allowed him a seat. "Thanks, kid," he said. I looked over at him with confused eyes. I rolled my eyes. That's the same word in the same sentence. Before looking back out of the window. "No problem," I muttered out. "I'm Aki Huntkill," he said. I looked over at him. There was no way that was an actual name that people would name their kids. "Your name's Aki?" I asked with disbelief in my voice. My eyes furrowed, and I looked him up and down. He was certainly dressed rather oddly for his accent, and his name as well. It didn't seem like it fit, but I didn't comment on it. "Yeah, what's yours?" he asked, raising an eyebrow at my tone of voice. I sighed and gave a response. "Amelia Hernandez, but I was adopted by the Greenhouse family," I said. Aki nodded. I didn't really need that last part, but thanks for telling me anyway. I sheepishly turned away. "So are you new here?" he asked. "Yeah, I just got enrolled last week, so this is my first day." "Did you not recognize me and put it together?" I asked him. "Nah, it's my first day too. I was just taking a wild guess." He started. I didn't say anything back, just stared at him in astonishment. Not the wondrous kind, but the kind where you think to yourself how someone has gotten this far into life. Aki just moved in from most likely a lower state in profit. then just asked me if I'm new to the school. Wow, that is definitely a personality trait, I said. He raised an eyebrow. At that, before looking back towards the ground, thinking to himself about something. After a short moment or two, he looked back up at me. You said you were adopted by the greenhouse family, right? He asked curiously. I looked back at him. Yeah, why? I asked. He seemed to think for a little before responding. What happened to your original parents? He asked, his tone softer. Yeah, that tone was not softer. They were arrested and their parental rights were taken away, I said before quickly looking away. Outside the window, staring at the scenery that flew past the moving bus. Eventually, after another long and grueling 46 minutes, I don't know how she knew that, the bus stopped in front of the school. The building was a dark red brick and pretty large. The doors were open. Inside the school, okay, so I apologize for the intervention, but I write these like weeks apart from each other, so there is a bit of retconning in this accidentally. In this original statement, I stated that the doors were already open. Inside the school were students, some wearing backpacks, others not having things at all. Aki got off the seat we were sat upon as the other kids stood up to wait for the bus doors to open. I followed suit, my vision slightly blurred and messed up a bit as I hadn't stood up quickly in a long while. And then I feel very quickly, I state that the doors had not opened yet. So, if you would have picked that up without me saying that, don't comment about it, I guess. The sound of whooshing filled my ears as the doors swiftly opened. Like a breach in the dam, the fellow kids on the bus ran out, like a leak. I followed, not running, as I wanted to conserve my energy for right now. The air outside was humid, warm as it touched my over-length hair. I shielded my eyes from the sun, which had just come out. It seemed Apollo himself was shining in front of me. Little Greek mythology thing there. If you all know who Apollo is, if you don't, I'm actually kind of surprised. As I walked through the front court to the doors, my sneakers hit the pavement. The children at the front of the building were waiting to be allowed inside. At the side of the area, I saw Rose, sitting on a bench next to the girl that looked about our age. She had blonde hair and brown eyes, pale skin, and wore a school uniform with glasses, something I didn't know the school had. Not glasses, a school uniform. I retconned, I already introduced that girl. So, the fact that I gave her description again, I had to add school glasses after school uniform. And it made it sound like the school doesn't have glasses. Anyway, she was wearing a navy blue shirt with a tan maxi skirt, which is just like a long skirt. I walked to the trash can set up to the bench that Rose and this other girl were sitting on. They're sitting on the bench. Rose looked over to me, adjusting her glasses that seemed to practically glow in the sunlight. The glare from the glass could have set an anthill on fire. Her eyes narrowed as she put on a visible expression of disdain. When do the doors open? I timidly asked. Again, that was not timid. She just stared at me for a few seconds before sighing and changing her gaze to look directly forward of her. 7:05, she responded. I looked down at my phone, which I was holding in my pocket. The time said it was 7 June 15th, 2014. I do retconning later on in this. I nodded before quickly walking away. As I left, I could pick up on the quiet whispering of Rose and that other blonde girl. They seemed to be talking about me. I ignored them as I got to the edge of the crowd. Students were still banging on the doors. The sound echoed endlessly in my head. I let out a groan as I gripped at the sides of my temple. The constant pattern of contact was beginning to get annoying, and I didn't want to deal with it for much longer. Before I even knew it, the banging stopped. I curiously looked towards the door. Students flooded into the school. I followed in, part of the crowd. There were 5 metal detectors set up in the main lobby. Kids were setting it off left and right, which annoyed me. It was so easy. Just move all your metal objects out your bag and your person. How hard could it be? As I walked through the 2 towers like metal detectors, they lit up red, showing I had metal on my person or in my bag. I sighed and regretted my previous thoughts. They need to lower the intensity on these things. I walked to a white table set up, putting my book bag on the surface while a teacher searched through the contents. After a few seconds, he let go, handing me my bag. You're good to go, he said. I subtly rolled my eyes and muttered, gracias, under my breath. I then scattered out of the main hall right into the cafeteria. There were students sitting in octagon-style seats, not a single stray left for me. I looked around, noticing that some kids were simply eating on the floor, and I looked over to the farthest corner, which was close to the doors, where you would enter the left and right wings. Placing my bag down, I looked around the lunchroom. Kids were eating with their friends, their partners, and their classmates, and here I was, sitting all by myself. That was until Aki came over. Excuse me. He set his bag right next to mine before sitting down against the wall, turning to look at me. All alone? He asked me. I shrugged, looking down at the ground. Yeah, I haven't made many friends yet, so I'm just eating alone for now, I responded. Aki nodded, looking at the large crowd of people in the foreground. That sucks. You can't eat with your sister? He asked, raising an eyebrow, and looked at me curiously. I nodded. Yeah, I don't think she likes me very much, I said back, glancing over at Rose, who was eating with that blonde girl next to her. Damn, what a bitch. I don't know why it took so long to say that. I was contemplating saying it. Sorry for anyone if you cringed at that. Aki said with zero hesitation. I hate to admit that I let out a small chuckle. Aki seemed to chuckle as well. My eyes fell on the kid with the lizard on his shoulder from the bus, just like me and Aki. He was sitting on the floor, but instead of being alone, he was with a tall boy with lanky black hair. The boy was skinny and sort of toned in skin color. He seemed athletic, but I wouldn't be surprised if he wasn't. That is where chapter 2 ends. And I'm just clothed in darkness right now. That's better. Excuse me for my sickness. I think that is where I'm going to end this video. I know I stated that I might read chapter 3, but chapter 3 isn't even done yet to my knowledge. And this video has been going on for 34 minutes. So, again, thank you for anyone who ended up watching this video. If you liked it, hit it with a like. And if you didn't like it, hit it with a dislike, because I also check those. I like to see if people don't like my things, just to know if they didn't like it. If you are not already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. If you are into readings, lazily created music, or just some kid talking about random things that have nothing that I know really not a lot about. Again, thank you for anyone who decided to take almost 35 minutes out of their day to watch this. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your view. I don't think anyone is going to be here long enough to see this message, because it's half an hour to watch this entire video. Anyhow, again, I will most likely be remaking the musical songs. The musical songs, that's definitely a phrase. These songs I created for the most recent song that I created for Dobby. I think it's his fifth song. Yeah, his fifth song. The Kirishima song, the Mojito song, and the Mineta song. I'll try to make them not into shorts. But there is also no promise that those will not be lazily created either. But fingers crossed, here's hoping that from now into then I get the resources that I need to feel comfortable making music. This is 36 minutes long, so thank you for watching for the third time. I don't have a outro really, so have a good day, good night, and a good life.